If I was 20 years old, starting in this journey of watches, something like this would be on my wrist day and night, literally, because it's a lovely looking watch. Back in those days, I'd solely critique a watch based on looks. And that's what this is. It looks great. It's got some Paul Newman Daytona vibes. Obviously, Paul Newman's watch was a tri-compact. This is a bi-compact. It's very vintage, neo-vintage styling. The warmth of that lume tone accompanied by the almost ivory creamy dial makes for a very pretty watch. And that's exactly what this is. Now, I'm not 20 anymore. I have matured since then, and I've learnt a lot of things along the way when it comes to watches. And after all the honeymoon and all the bells and whistles have all died down, I want to tell you guys what I think of this watch, where it could offer room for improvement. There's quite a few areas that have left me wanting throughout the week. Let's dive in. Now, I did mention that when I was young, I'd probably wear a watch like this on my wrist, and I did. I actually did when I was young. Anything that looked really good, it drew my attention. And I think visually is the first thing that sells us on watches. But after spending years and years with watches, collecting, buying, selling, refining your style and what suits you and your lifestyle, you also get to learn what functions are very good in a watch that suit you, and also what functions are useless. And there's a couple of them in this watch which I want to share. It's a beautiful looking watch, but unfortunately it also comes with some areas that really don't make sense to me. Nonetheless, NEOTYPE has sponsored this video, so I will of course leave all the appropriate links in the description section. If you're keen on this watch, by all means, feel free to check them out. And diving straight into the specifications of this watch, I measure a case diameter of 39 and a case height of 15. The lug to lug is 48.2 with a lug width of 22. That crown is an oversized 7.8mm signed screw down crown. The watch offers 200 meters of water resistance alongside those screw down pushers, and the total weight on the supplied rubber strap, I measure exactly 114 grams. Now on the wrist, the watch has been surprisingly comfortable. And even though it's a 39mm, I actually measure a bezel diameter of 41. So the overhead on the wrist looks great, the presence is there, but that case height coming in at 15mm was a little bit of a surprise to me. But in the watch's defense, accompanied with that rubber strap, it has been a comfortable experience. And looking closely at that rubber strap, it seems to be very well made. There's a taper from 22 at the lugs down to 20 at the clasp. It's comfortable, it's malleable, and yet strong enough to endure day-to-day wear and tear. Now turning the watch over, you'll notice there's a solid case back, and the workhorse is actually a Seiko VK64 Mega Quartz. Obviously it's going to have decent accuracy figures because it is a quartz watch, and accompanied with those screw down pushers and screw down crown, you've pretty much got a very robust and very strong watch that can handle day-to-day life. It's a strong piece. Now turning my attention closer to the dial of this watch, it's a sandwich style dial with very good tonality. In fact, that cream colored dial matched up with a warm toned lume really seems to suit this watch. I'm normally not a fan of faux patina, but here I think it's done tastefully and nice, brings a nice neo-vintage feel to this watch and a general warm tone overall. Now there are two different variants of this model. There's this panda which I have on my wrist, as well as a reverse panda. And for me, my eye was drawn to this particular model. I think it looks nice, the colouring is good, the legibility has been great, so in that area it's not disappointed. And speaking of legibility, the watch's crystal has 5 layers of anti-reflective coating on the underside. It does have a slight blue hue to it, and I've noticed that in usage. Whether indoor or out, I have seen a slight blue hue. However, with those 5 layers, the clarity has been good and there's been no washout. So in that regard, the AR coating is doing its job. Now the bezel insert on this watch is a black polished ceramic. It's lume filled with Swiss Superluminova, old radium, and turning down the lights, that lume is actually doing a very good job. It's not dive watch territory, but I think for a chronograph, the lume is actually great. Now putting all the specs aside, what are my gripes and room for improvement of this watch? I did say there's quite a few of them. First and foremost, I've never been a fan of limited run watches. This is limited to 150 pieces. And the reverse panda is limited to 75. Now for me, as far as I'm concerned, when you do a mass produced watch, you really don't need to limit it in its run, but manufacturers do it, micro brands, major brands, they all do the same thing. Never been a fan. Second gripe for me is the overall thickness of this watch. It does come in at exactly 15mm on the dot to the top of that sapphire crystal. I think that's the sort of spec I'd expect from a Valjoux movement, something in an automatic chronograph. I have a few watches of that caliber in my collection and they're coming in around 14.9 thereabouts. This is 15mm and it's a quartz. So I think that should have been better. I understand the watch offers 200 meters of water resistance, it's solid, it's well built and robust, but 15mm is 15mm. A couple of mil off that really would have been beneficial here. Also, I forgot to mention the price of this watch. It comes in at 930 Australian dollars, thereabouts. It's around 525 euro. That's not inexpensive. I'll put it in the gripe section. I think it is a quartz watch after all. So getting close to $1,000 Australian for us enthusiasts, that might be a little bit of an ask for a watch like this. Obviously being quartz. Now looking closely at that dial, there's two subdials. One of them is a 24-hour subdial, and I've read in the comments in the past, with watches like this, it's a useless complication. For me, I tend to agree, there's really no need for it. Also, whilst I'm on those subdials, the 9 o'clock subdial is a 60-minute counter, and the only time it will move is when you actually activate the chronograph. So what I'm trying to say to you guys is, there's nothing moving on this dial in my day-to-day usage. If I look at the watch, it tells me it's 3:15. Nothing's moving. There's no seconds hand, there's nothing. If I look back at the watch in another 15 minutes or so, then I can see that that minute hand has moved, so has that hour hand a little bit. That's it. So the only time you're going to get movement off that dial is if you activate that chronograph to get that central seconds hand running. So as a watch that's set and forget, the watch does keep good time, but there's nothing visually to sort of stimulate you to say, wow, unless you actually start that chronograph. So keep that in mind. And lastly, there is a ghost date position on that crown. When you pull the crown up to the first position, you can hear the date clicking over. So there's a date wheel underneath this dial. And again, I think maybe they could have surgically removed it or just give us a date. But whatever the case, going back to my original argument, the watch is a very pretty watch. I was drawn to it by its looks. It reminded me of something that I get back in my early 20s, late teens. Yeah, I love this, look at the look of this, but there's no functional value. In my 50s now, I look at this watch and I say, gee, okay, it looks pretty and that's it. As a watch that you're going to put on your wrist, you know it's going to give an accurate time, you know it's robust, its functionality is great as far as the screw down crown coming in at 7.8mm. It screws down and latches down beautifully. The pushers also, when you unscrew them and activate them to operate that chronograph, again, seem to be very easy to use. And offering 200 meters of water resistance as a robust watch, I think you could easily wear this as a daily, and a very pretty one at that. Albeit personally, I'd probably keep that chronograph running 24/7 just to get some action on that dial. Let me know your thoughts about this watch. Let me know your thoughts about the looks of this watch. I think it looks great. On a visual perspective, it really does look lovely, albeit the watch has quite a few shortfalls. So be well, continue to enjoy this hobby and one another, and we'll see you in the next one.